There are 44 landlocked countries on earth. Not all of them are poor. Switzerland, Austria, Luxembourg, and Chechnya all thrive without a coastline. But there are exceptions. The overwhelming majority of landlocked nations are developing countries, and many rank among the world's poorest. Sub-Saharan Africa alone has 16 landlocked countries. Central Asia has 5. None of them are among the world's top economies. So what's really going on? It's geography destiny, or is there something else at play? Let's break it down. The single biggest economic disadvantage of being landlocked is the cost of trade. Ocean shipping is, by a massive margin, the cheapest way to move goods around the world. A standard shipping container can travel from Shanghai to Rotterdam, roughly 20,000 kilometers by sea, for less than it sometimes costs to truck tolls, potential corruption, transit fees, and delays. Studies by the World Bank have found that landlocked developing countries face trade costs that are on average 40 to 60% higher than their coastal neighbors. That's not a small gap. That's the difference between competing in a global market and being priced out of it entirely. Here's where it gets even more complicated. A landlocked country isn't just geographically isolated, it's politically dependent on its neighbors. Consider Bolivia. To export its natural gas, lithium, or soybeans, Bolivia has to go through either Chile, with whom it has a historically tense relationship, or through Peru or Brazil, each adding hundreds of kilometers and multiple bureaucratic layers. Or look at Chad. To get goods to international markets, Chad must rely on roads and infrastructure running through Cameroon. If Cameroon raises transit fees, changes its regulations, or simply has bad roads, Chad suffers. This is called transit dependency, and it's a form of geopolitical vulnerability that most coastal nations never have to worry about. A single political dispute, a coup next door, or even a major storm can completely sever a landlocked country's access to global trade. Switzerland gets away with this because it's surrounded by rich, stable, cooperative European nations with world-class infrastructure and strong legal frameworks. Rwanda, Mali, and Zambia are not so fortunate. Geography doesn't just shape trade costs, it shapes investment decisions. When a multinational company is deciding where to build a factory or set up a supply chain, they ask one fundamental question: how easily can I get my product to market? If the answer is through 3 countries, 2 border crossings, and a road that floods every rainy season, they're going to pick somewhere else. This means landlocked countries attract less foreign direct investment, less FDI means fewer jobs, less technology transfer, slower economic growth. And because these countries are poorer, they have less tax revenue to invest in improving their own infrastructure, road, railways, logistic hubs. It becomes a feedback loop. Poor infrastructure discourages investment, which keeps the country poor. The World Bank has a term for this, the landlocked trap. It's not just about geography, it's about the compounding disadvantages that geography creates. Some landlocked countries are sitting on enormous natural wealth. Zambia has copper, Botswana has diamonds, Bolivia has lithium, arguably the most critical mineral for the clean energy transition. Kazakhstan has oil and gas. You might think this would solve the problem, and sometimes partially. Botswana used its diamond wealth and is today one of Africa's most developed economies. Kazakhstan has built significant infrastructure on oil revenues, but natural resources create their own problems for landlocked countries. First, you still have to export these resources, and that brings you right back to the transit dependency problem. Bolivia has fought for decades over access to the sea, primarily because it needs a coast to export its resources competitively. Second, there's a resource curse. Countries that rely heavily on a single export commodity, especially one with volatile prices, often fail to diversify their economies. When copper prices collapse, Zambia suffers. When oil prices drop, Chad suffers. Without economic diversification, there's no resilience, and diversification requires manufacturing and services, which require affordable trade access, which landlocked countries often don't have. So are landlocked countries simply doomed? No, but escaping the trap requires specific strategies that most coastal countries never have to think about. The first is regional integration. The more deeply a landlocked country is integrated into a regional trade bloc like the European Union or East African Community, the lower its effective trade costs. When neighboring countries cooperate on border procedures, share infrastructure costs, and harmonize regulation, the penalty for being landlocked shrinks dramatically. Second, services over manufacturing. Countries like Switzerland and Luxembourg couldn't compete on physical goods exports, so they became global leaders in services, banking, insurance, tourism, and and knowledge industries where geography matters far less. Rwanda is deliberately trying to become the Singapore of Africa, a services and tech hub. Third, infrastructure investment. China's Belt and Road Initiative has poured billions into rail and road networks through Central Asia, creating new overland trade corridors that didn't exist 20 years ago. Ethiopia has built new rail connections. These investments genuinely reduce trade costs. And for last, good governance and anti-corruption. This is less tangible but perhaps most important. Countries that can guarantee rule of law, protect property rights, and offer predictable business environments attract investment despite the geography. So in the end, geography is not destiny, but it is a serious compounding disadvantage that plays out over generations. The countries that succeed despite being landlocked are the ones that understand their constraints and build strategies specifically designed to overcome them. The ones that fail are often trapped by a combination of bad geography, bad luck, colonial history, and bad governance, each factor reinforcing the others in a cycle that is genuinely hard to break. The question isn't really why do landlocked countries fail. The better question is what would it actually take for them to succeed. Thank you for watching the video. Like and subscribe for more.